planned and put together a webinar to talk to you all about what the Immigration Justice Campaign at the American Immigration Council is doing, and how hopefully you can get involved in these difficult times. We are going to be recording this so that we can post it on our web and YouTube after. So please keep that in mind. We're going to take question and answer in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So try not to put it in the chat. We don't see the chat, but you will be answering questions at the end of the session. So please go ahead and put those in the Q&A. This session is also closed to the media. If you are here as a member of the media, we ask that you, this is not on the record, and that you reach out to us separately to talk to us about any published work that you would like to do on this. And I think that's it. We can move on to the next slide. So hi. I needed the slides so that I could introduce myself. My name is Bekah Wolf. I'm the director of the Immigration Justice Campaign. The Immigration Justice Campaign is a project of the American Immigration Council, and we work very closely with AILA. And we have today with us Juliana Madaki, who has been a volunteer with us as an attorney for 5 years, I think, at this point. So a seasoned volunteer who's going to talk about her experience volunteering with us and how this process works, so that you can hear directly from someone who has been a volunteer, what kind of support you get, and also what the experience has been like. And finally, we have Sasha Bershad, who's our senior managing attorney, who's going to talk about our model for supporting attorney volunteers. But if you're not an attorney and you're on here and are still are interested in volunteering or just want to know more about how we operate, we have a lot of non-attorney opportunities. So we're going to talk about attorneys first, but if you're not an attorney, don't get off the line. We do still have a lot of opportunities and ways that you can plug in and support our work. So the Justice Campaign is designed, our goal is to increase free legal services for immigrants, both in removal proceedings and other kinds of immigration proceedings. So we also leverage the voices of our clients and our legal service provider partners in order to inform the council's very robust policy and litigation arms as well. So in addition to providing direct services and pairing people with attorneys to represent them, we also are gathering information from directly affected communities on what is happening and how these policies that we think are coming and that have been in place for the last many years to be able to inform how our policy and litigation teams really what they focus on and what kind of strategies we're going to use to try to improve the immigration legal system. So a little bit of a looking backwards. The Justice Campaign actually started during the first Trump administration. So we have, for better or worse, quite a bit of experience handling the kinds of policies that the Trump administration has promised that they are going to enact, and also a bit experience on how we have responded and how we were built up to respond to those needs. So we began working on family separation and family detention. So some of our volunteers and maybe some people on this line came to us and were working with us at the Dilley Detention Center. We had opportunities for people to volunteer in person at Dilley and in other places, but also part of joining our rapid response network to sort of mobilize people across the country, attorneys and non-attorneys, to support the work and support immigrant communities and further immigrant rights and attempt to protect some of the most vulnerable amongst us. And so we've now been going on for 7 years. We have adapted and changed throughout both the previous Trump administration and the Biden administration. We have expanded our the scope of our work and the kinds of cases that we can support, and we're continuing to lean into that, knowing that we can't just we can't be one note. We're going to have to be able to respond to different needs and needs that we can't predict at this point. As I'm sure folks know from the news at this point, there's a lot of conversation about rounding people up and putting people in detention and deporting people. And we are going to need, we're prepared to be responsive to those needs where they sort of arise and as they arise. So we're going to go on to our attorney mentorship program and sort of our structure of how we work and how we are designed to really take someone who's a volunteer who's never done an immigration case. You don't have to have any experience. You can be based anywhere in the country in order to sort of join our forces and help folks. So I'm going to turn it over to Sasha.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Bekah. And thank you all as well for joining the call today. So as Bekah mentioned, we are in a place of, response and adaptability. And so right now, we take immigration cases for individuals who are both in immigration removal proceedings, meaning they have cases in immigration court. And then also we support individuals who have cases before U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services as well, for folks who may not have, cases in immigration court. On the immigration court side, we provide mentorship for attorneys to represent individuals both in the detained context, folks who are currently in immigration detention centers and seeking to be released so that they can pursue their immigration process outside of detention. We also provide representation for individuals who are not in detention and who are already pursuing those cases outside of court. Right now, the majority of the cases that we provide mentorship on are asylum cases of a variety of different grounds. But we also do have cases that, are, for example, individuals who have received asylum and are filing for permanent residence, individuals who need bond or parole if they're in detention. And we are most likely going to be looking at how to incorporate other types of cases, given the things that Bekah just mentioned in light of what may be coming our way. And it's really important that, we're nimble and we're able to screen for additional options for clients where, asylum, withholding of removal, or protection under the Convention Against Torture may not be an option for them. In terms of our mentorship and training model, so we provide mentorship that will essentially follow a pro bono attorney through the life of their client's immigration case. And so when you decide to take on a case with us, we will start off with an introductory call. We will go through the referral form that we've received for your client and help you understand what is the current posture of the case and what are the next steps, both procedurally and substantively, just to kind of get things going. You will also, at the very beginning of the case, you will receive an orientation manual that will walk you through, depending on your case type, what the general timeline and steps are in your client's immigration case and how to move through those. We will go over those guides with you. And then we have a plethora of materials on our website there that's linked for you in the slide on all of the different case types that you may be working on with your clients. In those materials, we provide a sample documents for you. We provide practice advisories, guidance on emerging issues, and of course, many training videos that will help you walk through the case. You definitely do not need to have any immigration experience, to take on cases with us, because we will be there with you every step of the way to guide you through your client's matter. We also hold weekly office hours that you can attend on a drop-in basis, where you will connect with your immigration justice campaign mentoring attorney. And you can ask questions at that time. However, we are also always available for you to set up a separate call or connect with us via email. If you have additional questions on your case, we are available to review any documents that you draft, pleadings, briefings, research before it is submitted to the immigration court or the requisite immigration agency, and provide you with substantive feedback on those documents as well. Bekah, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, that's fantastic. Thanks, Sasha. And just so folks sort of understand the model, zooming out a little bit, we have referring partners. So we have organizations on the ground, again, all over the country, that send us referrals for cases for people who are in need of support. We're going to go a little bit after we hear from Juliana about all the different kinds of ways that we the kinds of cases, not just sort of the subject matter of cases, but if you're thinking about not being able to take on a full asylum case that feels overwhelming, but you want to sort of be able to support in other ways, we have those options. But before we go into those kinds of details, I am, as I mentioned, excited to introduce Juliana, who I think I was the first mentoring attorney that worked with Juliana back on parole and bond cases 5 years ago, when I was one of the mentoring attorneys here. And so really, really appreciate you coming on and sharing some time with us. Juliana, can you just start by saying sort of where you're located, how you first came to the Justice Campaign, what your background was before you came to us?
Yes, thank you for having me. So I went to law school as a non-traditional student, so I had a career before I went to law school. And after I graduated, I started my own solo practice. And I did not know, I wouldn't have guessed that I would be practicing in immigration law at all. So it was at a conference, I heard someone talking about immigration law, and I decided, this sounds intriguing. It sounds like I could make a difference in this field. And so I decided to reach out to that particular attorney to talk to him about it. And I discovered that it's actually quite complicated. And as a solo practitioner, I knew that, this was not something that I would be able to just pick up and learn and do all just by myself. And so also having had some life experience, I knew the value of volunteer organizations. And so here I am practicing in Louisville, Kentucky. I did not know, I couldn't find any volunteer organizations here that actually supported people with immigration issues. And then, of course, this attorney I talked to had told me about AILA, and being a part of AILA now led me to Immigration Justice Campaign, and that's how I discovered IJC.
Thank you for that. And yes, even from rural Kentucky, I think most of your cases have been out of Colorado. Is that general?
Yes, that is correct. I remember when my first time, I got my first case, and I was very nervous. I did not expect that I would know what I was doing. Because I already had a life experience. I was sure that I would never be able to do it. just because the materials that I had looked at before previously just seemed so daunting. And so I remember when you walked me through the process, you unlocked the resources, and I could not believe it. I was just astonished. You had documents, sample documents. That was just so well done. It was just videos. I would just sit and I watched everything. I reviewed the documents, and initially, I think the first thing I did was a parole request. It was just so extensive, so detailed. And of course, my I was able to get the client released, and then of course we moved on to bond hearings. It just seemed like it made no sense for me to not continue to volunteer, because I realized, even though I started because I wanted to be part of the solution, I realized that it was actually developing me personally for my practice. And so everything I do with parole, bond, asylum was on the foundation that I got from IJC.
That's wonderful. Can you just tell folks a little bit more about what kinds of cases you've taken on now? Because you've had some odd ones, I will say.
Yeah, I have. Well, so of course, the release from detention cases. I have done asylum, withholding, protection under CAT. I have done, believe it or not, I have done BIA appeals. I have done state of removals. And everything. It's not based upon going to conferences. This was 100% based upon what IGSC taught me. The resources are available. The mentorship, it is just absolutely incredible. As long as a person has an interest, that's all you need, just the interest to do it. There's absolutely no limits to what a person is able to actually accomplish. Um, and we're talking about me. It's just I'm a solo practitioner. I know that there are many people, many attorneys that are willing to help, but nobody can devote that kind of time to develop a person. And this all happened for me by partnering with Immigration Justice Campaign. And also, there are just so many changes in immigration law. I can't afford it, time-wise, resources-wise. I rely on IGAC to update me. There's usually always, because I'm already a part of the network, I get emails about notifications about webinars for whenever there's a new revision to existing law. I just attend. That's all my commitment was, just to attend. And invariably, it would help me in my practice. And then, of course, the commitment I make is just periodically to take one case, and that's it.
I swear, folks, we did not prep. We did not ask Juliana to say these things. There are no notes. I just appreciate how the glowing review. Can you, I think one of the things that we've encountered recently, over all of IJC really, but when people are first coming and wanting to be supportive, is sort of that daunting feeling of how in the world do you take on a case that you don't have legal expertise in, or something that you have a lot of experience in. How did you sort of get around that mental hurdle?
Well, I think that the first thing that gave me a deep sense of trust and confidence was just the resources. Yeah. Looking at the documents, I got the sample documents for parole, and then for asylum, all the webinars. It is so detailed and so good. Reviewing that information, it speaks for itself. I mean, the information is that good. It walks you through the process. You just feel comfortable with it. And then when you have a mentor, whenever there's a question, you can call the person. Whenever I have my briefs are reviewed when I need them to be reviewed. Well, of course, at the beginning, they all were reviewed. And then the feedback I would get every single time, it just refined the document more and more. It's just, you just know, you can tell the quality of the learning. I mean, it's just all there. And so with that, it gave me a lot of confidence and faith.
And do you now do immigration as your private practice as well?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I have I do removal defense primarily. Um, I represent people in the removal proceedings all around the country, including in detention, all over the place. Just being in Louisville, Kentucky, and then having to defend people under the auspices of IGC in Arizona and Colorado also gave me confidence. When I got called to in my private practice to represent people in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and other parts of the country, it was just easy for me to do because I knew it was doable. I already had the experience, and the one thing I can always say about my experience volunteering with the IGC, it's actually it's a basis for my practice. I don't know. I would have to come up with a different way of operating if IJC no longer existed, because I depend on IJC to keep me informed and knowledgeable. It's just that good.
Thank you, Juliana. And I will say, what part of what we do, and Juliana has sort of mentioned it, is not only do we have sort of what's on our website now, and we do have links to the website. I know there's been some questions in the chat about what our resources look like, what that Juliana's been talking about, but also just, and this was very common, particularly under the first Trump administration, although also in the most recent Biden administration, we're really committed to doing practice advisories that are fast and furious, of getting into practitioners' hands what they need to know about a new rule or a new policy and how to apply it. So our network of volunteers, whether you have an active, our materials aren't behind a paywall or not a paywall, but aren't behind any kind of barrier, and everyone has access to our materials, and we feel really strongly that people need to be able to get information quickly, but good information and accurate information. Thank you so much, Juliana. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the other volunteer opportunities, and then get to have plenty of time for questions, which I will, some are going to be directed at all of our different panelists. Cal, can you change the slide? There we go. So we have, first of all, what kind of volunteers besides attorneys? We do have this next biggest pool of volunteers are people who are bilingual or multilingual. What we need are people who are sort of willing to be problem solvers, especially for folks when we are representing people in detention. There are a lot of barriers to communications with people in detention, and so we rely on our volunteer pool of interpreters for most of our sort of more common languages, and we pair an interpreter or a translator with an attorney, a volunteer interpreter with a volunteer attorney, and they work sort of together on throughout the life of the case, especially on cases that are going to be resolved pretty quickly. There was a question in the Q&A of, like, how long, what does our commitment look like? What are we, let's get to some like nuts and bolts here. we have a lot of different opportunities. So for bilingual, multilingual folks, as you can see on this slide, we both have interpretation, but we also have translation. So if someone, if we will send an email out to our volunteer pool of people who speak Spanish and say, we have this document, we need it translated. Is anyone available? And you reply back and say, you know what, this week is pretty light on my, other obligations. I can take that on. So some of those volunteer opportunities kind of ebb and flow with your level of commitment. We also have a project where we are answering a hotline for people who are currently in Border Patrol custody and doing fear interview preparation. So that's another non-attorney volunteer opportunity for someone who speaks Spanish fluently. Where we are taking phone calls and giving some legal information over the phone. So those are opportunities that we have right now. If you've filled out a volunteer application, which we are going to circulate the link to, we have those kinds of opportunities at the moment. The other thing to sort of flag for our attorneys is that we do have a fair number of retired attorneys or inactive attorneys that work with us, and depending on your state's rules, we have lots of things you can do. In some states, you can do it if you can provide pro bono representation even as if you're inactive, but we also have projects where you're not necessarily entering an appearance as an attorney, but you're doing other kinds of work like preparing documents, doing research, collecting country conditions. We try to make as many different, we have a very high need and we only expect that to be getting higher. And so finding creative ways that people and non-attorneys can plug in and participate is really a critical part of how the Justice Campaign operates. Can we go to the next slide? So we have two ways of going about this. We have a volunteer application, and then we have on our next slide is our how to sign up for our email list. So right now, we've been very focused on how we recruit and provide direct legal representation. Our hotline to the people in Border Patrol custody is another opportunity where we're not providing full legal representation, but we have a model of providing legal access and legal information. Some of the other things that we have done historically and are preparing to do sort of based on what we are hearing news reports about what we could be expecting are having volunteers, again, don't have to be attorneys, in geographically diverse locations. So if you are like, you know what, I'm retired or I'm semi-retired or I'm a student or I have a flexible work schedule, whatever that may be, and I want to know if there's going to be an opportunity in my city or in my state to support rapid response. That could look like going to the immigration courts and observing in the courts. That could look like helping us do emergency filings in courts. We've unfortunately had to think very creatively again about some of this stuff. So for people who are not sure if they fit in the interpreter bucket or the attorney bucket, we really encourage you to join our email list, because when we have new kinds of opportunities, new volunteer opportunities, that's where you will find out about it. When we have to say, okay, folks, we have this new need. We know that X, Y, and Z is happening in Colorado. If you're interested in this project, please respond to this email. That's how you're going to find out about those opportunities as they come up. If you are an attorney, a retired attorney, or someone who's bilingual, we really encourage you to fill out our volunteer application, which is the slide that you have here. And that's going to lead you to sort of identifying what kinds of things you're interested in and what your skill sets are. If you're not sure if you should fill out the volunteer application, fill out the volunteer application and we will figure out if it's a good fit or if we should put you in our list of people to be contacted. We use all, we can use volunteers of all languages. In fact, the more I would say not rare, but the less common the language is that you have access to interpretation, the better, because that how we do it is pull a pool of people that speak a particular language to put out a request for someone to volunteer. So for folks that have different sort of language questions in the chat and things like that, please, please go ahead and fill out the volunteer application. There's a lot of questions about sort of what our role is as IJC in terms of mentors, not just in terms of mentorship, but like, do we partner in direct representation? Do we do other things? And I will just say that in general, we are set up to mentor attorneys, and we are set up to mentor non-attorneys doing legal work. We cannot, for example, sponsor someone to become a DOJ accredited rep. We are sort of at the level of mentorship, not co-counsel. We don't take over cases for people if they take on a case and then, have to back out of a case for some reason. We don't have our own internal case representation docket. We don't carry our own caseloads. Can we go to the next slide? So the other ways, and I already talked about the possible future opportunities, but the other thing that we do are take actions. So when we are trying to mobilize our network of 20,000+ people in advocating for a particular policy or advocating against a particular policy, either with Congress or through other means, we have a mechanism for you to do that, which are called our take actions. And again, in order to get access to those, in order to get the announcements of when we're doing a take action, you would join our email list. I think that is it. That's again how you would sign up for our email list, and we are going to send the slides, circulate the slides around. So if you haven't had the opportunity to use the QR codes or write down the link, that's fine. We're going to send them to you so you can have them. Okay, let's go to some questions. Does that sound right? We've got plenty. So we're not necessarily we're gonna try to go through a lot of them. Thank you so much for everyone, and I'm gonna ask Sasha and Juliana to hop in here. I'm scrolling through because some of these we have already answered. Sasha, do we provide malpractice insurance? And what other kind of sort of support for people who want to do this, but also have other practices? What do we do for them?
Yes, so IJC does have malpractice insurance coverage if you are not covered otherwise in your own practice, and you would just let us know if you needed that coverage at the beginning of taking on your case, and we would coordinate accordingly.
And Sasha or Juliana, whoever wants to answer these sort of sets of questions, are volunteer opportunities remote? Do you do interpretation over the phone, over Zoom? Same question for how you're doing representation.
Yeah, so I have never done any representation in person. Everything I've done so far is by telephone or by Zoom. Specifically in EOIR is WebEx. So.
And actually, more and more of the detention centers are using video calls as well, WebEx calls. So we're set up to provide remote representation. Sasha, I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that as well. Oops, you're muted.
Thank you. For the most part right now, in the environment that we're currently operating in, much of the work, at the very least, communicating with your client, or if you're an interpreter, providing interpretation to the client and the pro bono attorney. Pretty much all of that can be done remotely. You know, there may be changes forthcoming in terms of specifically court appearances. Right now, many judges across the country will accept, you know, requests to appear remotely, or sometimes you don't even need to make a request, you just appear remotely. All of those remote appearance links are posted on the immigration court website, and we can provide those as mentoring attorneys to folks. But we don't know right now if there will be a change to request more in-person representation in court hearings. So it is going to be something that we'll have to monitor and share out.
So I'm going through some of these. Some of these are specific, pretty specific questions. Please feel free to email us as well if you have a very specific question about whether or not you're eligible to volunteer or things like that. We are also not going to be able to answer questions about your specific legal case. So what you're interested in is support in legal cases. We'll be able to we're not able to answer those questions at this point. So I'm just, so there's some questions about basically, do we file are we entering an appearance as Immigration Justice Campaign, or people are volunteer attorneys doing that on their own?
Oh, I'm happy to take that on. So generally, because we provide a mentorship model, we as Immigration Justice Campaign mentoring attorneys are not entering appearances on cases, and that is something that we ask the pro bono attorney to do in order to provide the full representation, or even a limited representation in some cases, to the clients. Juliana, I don't know if you want to add anything additional to that.
I'm sorry, I was reading through the questions. You were speaking specific about what?
Whether I was just saying that generally we ask the pro bono attorney to enter their appearance on the case in court or before USCIS, and the IJC mentoring attorney generally does not enter an appearance. Does that comport with your experience?
Right, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's my case. Yeah, I mean, so I take it on and I get supported.
Exactly. So there's a couple of other questions. There's some interesting questions about conflicts of interest, which I would love to dive into, but they're pretty niche. So a couple of things to just understand in terms of your availability to volunteer with us, either as an attorney or as an interpreter. Everyone signs a confidentiality agreement, and pro bono attorneys assign an agreement with us that they're agreeing to take on a case for the entire scope of the case, whatever that scope may be. And so we are not going to necessarily tell you what the rules are for your particular situation, because a lot of them are guided by your state's bar rules as well, your professionalism rules. There are some more nuanced questions here about whether or not there are conflicts if you work with the government. We are obviously a nonprofit. We don't work with the government. The government is our opposing counsel in legal proceedings. So if you're in a legal proceeding with so if you're in immigration court, it is adversarial, and the government is opposing counsel. But there are other kinds of opportunities actually that aren't adversarial. So people who are filing certain types of applications are just filing applications, and there's no opposing entity. So an interesting question. We do document reviews. So what we ask for is that people, when you take on a case, as Juliana sort of said, we give you a bunch of materials at the beginning. We tell you how to do it. We also give you some very, very practical nitty-gritty things like, here's how you contact your client if they're in detention, here's the address of the court if you need to file something there, or here's how you create an account to file something online with immigration court. And then we are there to answer questions along the way, but also to review things before you submit them. Again, if you're taking on, as an attorney, taking on a case, you are the client's representative. We do not enter an appearance and support the client, but we are supporting you to learn how and to guide you through how to best represent your client. I've sort of alluded to a couple of times to, there are things that attorneys can volunteer with that aren't taking on a full case in front of the immigration court. People can take on a case just to file a motion to reopen, which is a way of reopening an old removal order. For example, if someone was ordered deported in the 1990s, but could never be deported because of where they're from, we are concerned that those people, for example, could be detained under the Trump administration. And what we would need is one filing. We would need an attorney to file a motion. So there's different kinds of opportunities there without sort of signing on to a full asylum or other kind of case in front of the courts. I'm just going through some more questions. Some folks are asking about sort of what we're asking, how we're asking people to volunteer between now and January 20th. So we are encouraging cases that we have right now to attempt to have things filed before January 20th. We also are making some strategic decisions about how to support people who are in immigration proceedings, but maybe don't need to be in the courts and can pursue relief in other ways. So we are currently looking at cases of people right now, so people who have active cases right now, to see what we could do to mitigate further harm. But people are going to need lawyers after January 20th, perhaps even more than they need lawyers right now. And as much as Trump would like us to believe that they're going to just shut down immigration and shut down asylum and everything will just be shut down, we know that that's not true. And so we are really both, yes, trying to help people now to get out of the system before January 20th, but really kind of eyes wide open about what we think is coming. I don't know, Sasha, if you've seen any other questions here that you would like to flag. We have 50 questions in the chat, so I am scrolling through as quickly as possible. I think that's it. So a couple of other just reminders. We don't have cases ourselves. We don't represent people internally to the IJC. We get referrals from other organizations. So if you're looking for legal representation for you or a friend, the way people get into our system is by connecting with one of those referring partners, which can be found online in a couple of different places looking for legal services in your jurisdiction. For other folks, if you're thinking about volunteering, but you have some more questions or you're not sure yet, please fill out the volunteer application. That's how we will know to reach out to you and say, hey, do you want to have another conversation about how you might be able to participate? And if you're not sure, please at least sign up for our email list. It's a pretty low volume list. You're not going to get spammed by a bunch of emails from us, but it is a place where you will find out about things like new volunteer opportunities or new needs that we have as they come up. Otherwise, the Justice Campaign account has put in some links into the chat here for our email, signing up for the email list, our training materials, etc. And then we're also, as we mentioned, at the top, we'll circulate the presentation and slides. And this was recorded, so the recording of the training will also be available, or the webinar will also be available to anybody who registered for it, even if they weren't able to come or attend the entire presentation. I don't know if anyone on the panel, Sasha or Juliana, if you have any last words. Otherwise, we're just going to thank you all very much for coming.
Yeah, I would just like to add that it's what we do for people, because they're usually always in detention, is absolutely incredible. They appreciate it when they get released. They tell all their family about you. Their family calls you and thanks you. And they just, you could tell that they just love you forever. It's a fantastic feeling. So it's not just the learning and helping myself. It's also that fantastic feeling you get for having done something great for somebody else.
And we are anticipating needing as much community and collaboration in the coming years as possible. So thank you all for joining us. And we hope that we're going to be in contact. And thank you so much. A special thanks to Sasha for joining us in the afternoon, and for Juliana for joining us and sharing your experiences and really kind words, and also for taking the cases that you keep taking. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate your time.